Excellent. So that way, for those that couldn't be here this morning or on the Zoom meeting, we've got record of it so that we can share with him Rico's responses and his thoughts on some of these subjects. So I did talk with Rico as I was sharing about some of the concerns and questions. We've had a lot of things come up, from Talmud to Mishnah to just the walk in general, viewpoints of Rico's and Joe's. And obviously Joe is not here this morning to share his points. We can do that again at some point as well, because I think it's good. With technology, everybody is far away, but yet so close, and so much information gets passed, but I don't think all the context and the understanding and always gets passed. So people tend to jump to conclusions, and I just want to have an opportunity to minimize some of the confusion and the chaos that's going on out there, and kind of bring some uniformity and consistency to it. So Rico, we had a conversation the other day. Is there anything you want to share before we get started, or shall we just start with some questions?
Just go ahead. If I don't know, I tell you.
Okay. I've got more people coming into the room. Just so you guys know, we probably have, 15 or 20 here in the room, and then we have everybody online. So hopefully you guys can see the room fairly well. Okay, so there's a list of questions. I had everybody send in as many questions as they can, and so we made a list of those. Anthony's going to take some notes on those as well as we go along, and then we'll open up the floor to other questions maybe that did not get sent in to me. So I'm just going to kind of run down the list here, and let's go with, there were some questions concerning Hanukkah given the season, so I'm just going to run through those, and I think those will be pretty basic for you to answer, Rico, but that way everybody hears. Should families celebrate Hanukkah, and is it required?
We should celebrate Hanukkah. It's a national holiday of Israel. The question to you is, what is the reason for Hanukkah? I mean, are we going to be celebrating something that really we don't know what it means, or are we going to try to celebrate something that has a meaning for us today and our spiritual walk? So let's look at the history of Hanukkah for a minute. In the book of Haggai, chapter 2. Let me go there. So let's go to Haggai, chapter 2, right? Can I share the screen?
Yes.
You have to make me a co-host.
Okay. Okay, Alicia, how do I do that?
Today there are more people defending Christmas than they are defending Hanukkah. And being that you guys are asking me to answer questions, I will be blunt and I'll tell you some of my concerns within the congregations, because they're very serious concerns that we also need to address as a group, as a kingdom. And when we go in the book of Haggai, find it here. In chapter 2, now remember, these events happen way before Hanukkah. Just remember that. So when you go, it's a prophet in regards, it went to Zerubbabel and Yeshua, forgot his name. Zerubbabel and Joshua, son of Jehozadak, the high priest. Then in chapter 2, he is telling you, don't wait anymore. And I want you to notice when the prophecy to Haggai was given to God, when to finish the building of the temple, On the 24th day, on the 9th month. The 9th month is Kislev. The second year of Darius, the word of the Lord came to the prophet Haggai. So now we have a precedent in which God, to the prophet, told Israel when they came back from Persia, he says, build the temple, the building of the temple. The 24th of Kislev. About 150 years later, you have the events of the Hanukkah. And they rededicated the altar on the 25th of Kislev. So what is more important? Trying to celebrate Christmas like everybody's trying to defend because we don't want to offend people, or trying to guard the integrity of God's house, which represents his authority and his kingship and his throne. So Hanukkah is the fight of, it's our daily fight today of preserving our identity, restoring God's sacred space versus competing for somebody else's sacred space Christmas. And Hanukkah is a custom, and according to the book of Maccabees, it was actually a national celebration. Let me ask you all a question here. Did you all celebrate it in the Thanksgiving Day? All of you? So I don't understand. So you celebrate Thanksgiving, and there was not a question about whether we should or not, but yet when we deal with the Hanukkah, and it deals with the temple, now we have an objection. And I'm going to be straight up blunt with you guys, and please don't get offended, okay? That's not my intent. But we have to call it what it is. We still come from a system of religion that deep within our soul, we have replacement theology still. And anything related that looks anything close to Jewish, then we have an objection without really looking into it, without really studying it, without really researching it. So we can follow President's Day. We can follow 4th of July. We can follow Thanksgiving, which has no biblical connection whatsoever. And we take the day off and we have a great time. But mention Hanukkah. Oh, that's Jewish stuff. No, that's temple stuff. That is actually us remembering that the sacred space of God should not be desecrated, and any chance we have to restore it to a sacred space must be done by any means necessary in the midst of oppression, in the midst of persecution, and in the midst of having people push our values away to accept their values. It's exactly what happened in the story of Maccabee, is what happened today. This is a great learning experience for us, because this so happened that it's so close to Christmas. Many people are going to be celebrating Christmas instead of Hanukkah, and they say they follow Torah, and they will not follow Hanukkah because it's Jewish. But yet, the Bible tells us Yeshua was there in the Feast of Lights, and people justify it. They come up with some crazy excuses. Well, he wasn't really keeping it, really. Yeshua came to restore his father's house. He's not going to go and celebrate the day when his throne was reestablished again after the conquest of the Maccabees. Our lack of understanding on some of these things, guys, is lacking. And this is the reason why we have certain questions and doubt. And instead of saying, why do the Jewish people observe Hanukkah? Oh, that's the oil legend. It's a legend. What is the real reason? The dedication of the altar. Imagine if we object of observing the celebration of the dedication of the altar now on an event that can teach us a lot about how to keep our faith and our loyalty to God. Imagine when they dedicate the altar in the future. How many people within the Torah believing community are going to object it? They don't realize that they're going to react the same way. And then they're going to do exactly what's been said about me now, this stuff. Oh, he's going into Judaism, or he's rabbinical. No, I'm not rabbinical. I'm biblical. I'm actually going to the temple. 279 of the 613 commandments deals with the temple. Let me repeat that one again. 279 of the 613 commandments are directly linked with the temple. That's 45.5% of the commandments are linked to the temple. And the temple, as you know, is the worst research area in the whole Messianic Hebrew roots movement. And you know this is a fact. So really, we're arguing about areas we really do not study. And I think the questions are fair. So, but also the research has to be fair too. They have to be both ways. So yes, we should keep Pesach. Hanukkah.
Hanukkah. Excellent. Well, I'm going to ask some other questions that might be a little redundant to what you just said, but I'll just have you answer them so that way we just go down the list. Is there a rabbinic blessing?
Wait a minute. Have anybody seen that Haggai prophecy before?
No.
And that's cool, because you see, that's exactly what my teacher did with me. He began to show me through the biblical evidence, all these connections. And that's what I'm trying to do with you. Because there's a reason why I do these things. Go ahead. You were saying next question?
Yeah, no, we appreciate that very much. So that's the reason why we wanted you to answer these and not myself, because you've got a lot of information there. So the second one, is there a rabbinic blessing for lighting the Hanukkah candles in the Torah?
The Hanukkah, well, in the Torah, there's not a rabbinic lab. That question, I'm sorry, is a little weird, because you said, is there a rabbinic blessing in the Torah? No.
Yeah.
Well, of course there isn't. I mean, it's a custom, guys. We're blessing God for the dedication of the altar. And by the way, we are commanded to build the altar in the Torah. So the blessing is actually Torah-based. The better question would be, who had the legal authority to render those things as part of a liturgy? It's actually in the Torah. Let's go to Deuteronomy chapter 16. Deuteronomy chapter 16. And you read in verse 18. Can you read it for me? Because I don't want to lose my voice. I have like 2 more teachings to do. Can you see it right here? Hold on. Can somebody read it for me here?
Actually, we've got it here. Do you have the mic?
Verse 18 all the way to 22.
You shall appoint judges and officials for you in all your towns, that what Yahweh your God is giving you throughout your tribes, and you shall render for the people righteous judgments. You shall not subvert justice, you shall not show partiality, and you shall not take a bribe, for the bribe makes blind the eyes of the wise and misrepresents the words of the righteous. Justice, only justice you shall pursue, so that you may live, and you shall take possession of the land that Yahweh your God is giving to you.
Keep going.
All the way to 22, sorry. You shall not plant for yourselves an Asherah pole beside the altar of Yahweh your God, that you make for yourselves. You shall not set up for yourselves a stone pillar, a thing that Yahweh your God hates.
Okay. So let me ask you guys a question. Where are the judges in our towns? Where is the Beit Din? Who is qualified for a Beit Din? What are the qualifications for a Beit Din, for a house of judgment? Every Jewish community has it. This is the reason why Judaism is an order. They don't agree with many different customs, because you have Mizrahi, Yemenites, you have Ethiopians, you have Ashkenazis, you have Sephardics, you have different branches of Judaism. But when it comes to law, when it comes to the Sabbath, when it comes to the feast, when it comes to eating kosher, when it comes to the liturgy, when it comes to the study of the Torah, there's not one complaint. There's not even a division over it, because they understand law. It's not about religion. It's about law. That's what the Mishnah is. The Mishnah are the legal rulings based on the judges that even God himself said to establish, to render judgment, to give interpretation. Just like we, as a kingdom, we have a Supreme Court of the United States of America. We have state judges, municipal, state, federal, right? We have those judges to help deal with the issues at hand. Some cases never make it to the Supreme Court. Some cases never make it to the state court because they're different jurisdictions. So when it comes to the feast days, the new moon, when it comes to even kosher food, when it comes to all this stuff, falls under the legal jurisdiction of a Beit Din, of a Sanhedrin. And that's the word no one wants to hear. And remember, I promised you I was going to be straight up, and I'm also going to be bold. The movement does not want any order. The moment you try to establish order, some people take manipulative actions and they become cult leaders. They don't know how to handle, because we're not equipped. So therefore, when you have somebody who's trying to follow an order, you and I, we have been so wounded by people who we gave our trust, who have no idea about the law of the Torah, and they manipulate us. And then we say, whoa, we don't want any more order, because it's the same story being repeated over and over. And I get it. I understand it. We are all guilty. You know why we're guilty? Because we have been ourselves ignorant of understanding the Torah. We allowed other people to tell us what to do, and then we get caught, and then we don't know what to do. And that's normal behavior. This is the way it's in a relationship. But we need to have judges. So chapter 17, let's continue, because we need to read this because I have a feeling that the next questions that will follow up on this would include this type of foundation. Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay, so if you can continue reading for me, please.
Yes, sir. You shall not sacrifice to Yahweh your God an ox or sheep that has a physical defect or anything seriously wrong, for that is a detestable thing to Yahweh your God. If there is found in one of your towns that Yahweh your God is giving to you a man or a woman that does evil in the eyes of Yahweh your God to transgress his covenant, and by going and serving other gods, and so he bows down to them and to the sun or to the moon or to any of the host of the heaven which I have forbidden, and it is reported to you, or you hear about it, and you inquire about it thoroughly, and indeed the trustworthiness of the deed has been established, it has occurred, this detestable thing in Israel, then you shall bring out that man or that woman who has done this evil thing to your gates, that is, that the man or the woman, and you shall stone them with stones to death. Continue.
Where are you at?
I just got through with verse 5.
Okay, we got to keep going into verse 17.
Yes, sir. On the evidence of 2 or 3 witnesses, the person shall be put to death. The person shall not be put to death by the mouth of one witness. The hand of the witnesses shall be first against the person to kill the person, and afterward the hands of all the people.
Yeah, sorry, I'm going to interrupt you in between there. So if we understand that verse, then we will know why Yeshua could not render judgment on the adulterous woman in John chapter 8. Let's continue.
Of all the people, and so you shall purge the evil from your midst. If a matter is too difficult for you, for example, disputes between blood and blood, between legal claim and legal claim, and between assault and assault, and between matters of discernment in your towns, then you shall get up, and you shall go to the place that Yahweh your God will choose. Then you shall go to the priests and the Levites and to the judge who will be in the office in those days, and you shall inquire, and they shall announce to you the verdict, and you shall
Okay, give me a second.
Yes, sir.
Where is that structure today in the body? It doesn't exist.
Mm-hmm.
The Sanhedrin Council does not exist. So sadly, organizations, they take some of the principles and they create organizations. And in that, they don't follow biblical protocol and they turn to be cult leaders. The only Nasi, the only is the high priest, in the Bible. And then later on, you have, the Hileon Shammai. So right now, this is the court of law. This is court of law. In other words, there has to be a way in which we know how to handle certain problems within our gates. So we have our gates, then we have national matters. So all the feasts, they fall under the jurisdiction of the priests and the Levites. We don't have that office right now for them to render. So none of us can change any of the feasts because we don't have that jurisdiction. This is the problem, is law. By the way, I had minimum 3 lawyers look at these verses. One of them told me, Rico, do you realize that this is what they taught us in law school? He even told me in one of these verses, there's a language that he recognized from law school that they call it like the trash bin. It doesn't mean that there's trash. It means that whatever doesn't fit here or here, it goes into this general bin. And, I had another lady who's a lawyer from Panama said, would you read Deuteronomy 17 and 16 in context from a lawyer's perspective, knowing that the Torah is the legal constitution? And she goes, this is law. No one, according to the Torah, can change anything that belongs in the realm of holiness. If you do, you are transgressing a commandment. That's why on certain things, I go by default to the last Sanhedrin Council, not modern Judaism, the last Sanhedrin Council. Whether we like it or not, they have the biblically ordained authority to render judgments on matters of biblical law, not religion. I don't follow the religion of Judaism. 2 different things. People look at Judaism as a religion, when within the structure of Judaism, there is law. But many branches of it have adapted customs that they themselves have made into law. And that's the problem. But do you know that? Do you know the difference between a mincha and a halakha? what is a halakha and what are the different levels of rulings of law. This is why I study these. This is the reason why these needs to be studied. Because this was written by a rabbi who was also a Supreme Court judge in Israel, explaining the Torah in biblical law. Not as a religion. It changes everything. And it brings order because then you can dissect what you could do and what you cannot do. It's interesting, something to think about, right? And these are the steps that we got to go through. Keep going, please.
And you shall carry out exactly the decision that they announce to you from that place that Yahweh will choose, and you shall diligently observe according to all that they instruct you.
But that's what we don't want. God forbid we want to follow any order. Case in point, how many names of God are being used right now in the Hebrew Roots movement?
Oh my.
How many calendars are being used today? How many priesthoods are going on right now? Let's be real. We are doing exactly what Jeroboam did. Changing the places of worship. Now the temple's in the city of David. Now we have a different priesthood. Now the Jews don't matter. That's a different kingdom altogether. We're doing exactly what the 10 tribes. People wanted the identity of Ephraim. Welcome to Ephraim. You're doing exactly what he did. Exactly what he did. We want no submissiveness, no submission. And then we wonder how come we're in chaos? Because we don't want order. We don't want to follow something that has been established. But yet, when people come from the southern border, we get upset because they're coming in illegally and they want to change our laws, our values, our customs. Excuse me. We've been encroaching against the people of Israel the same way. We come through Yeshua. Yeshua kept the Torah. Yeshua followed kosher. Yeshua followed the law. You know why Christmas doesn't matter to me? Because he never endorsed it. Yeshua never once said, hey, by the way, celebrate my birthday when I leave. It has nothing to do with him. It's strange worship. Strange is called avodah sarah because it has no connection to the Bible, to sacred space. Hanukkah does. It has a direct connection with the temple. We can't even discern anymore. And there are people within the movement going back to Christianity. And worse, they're justifying Christians more than they're defending the Torah. And that's dangerous. And that's dangerous. And I'm no part of that. And I'd rather go back closer to Judaism than going back to Christianity. I'm sorry, I ain't going back. There's no way I'm going back to that. Now, I will minister to them. And I've just been doing that for almost 2 years. I went to a Spanish Christian church 2 years ago. They asked me to teach. And the whole congregation turned over. Now we teach there every week, follow Torah, and they're not going back either. I mean, can it be done? Yes. Can you show love and compassion and tolerance? Absolutely, but not compromise. We cannot compromise our values to appease people that didn't ask anything about Yeshua. They want us to adapt to their behavior. And that's not the values of the Torah. God wants us to do what he told us to do. We need to shake ourselves. We need to know, we need to recognize that he doesn't work for us. We work for him. And this is the reason why I'm no longer really connected with certain people. Although they're friends, but from afar. You stay over there. I'm staying over here because I know where I'm going. I'm not going back. Keep going, brother. Thank you.
Sure. And so according to the instruction of the law that they teach you, and according to the decisions that they say to you, you shall do. You shall not turn from the word that they tell you to the right or to the left. And the man who treats with contempt so as not to listen to the priest who is standing to minister on behalf of Yahweh your God, or to the judge, that man shall die. So you shall purge. Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Keep going.
So you shall purge the evil from Israel, and all the people will hear and will be afraid, and they will not behave presumptuously again.
If we don't learn order, when the next Sanhedrin is restored, and you have all these people going around pronouncing different names of the Lord and changing all the calendars and calling themselves Israel, they will be summoned to Jerusalem. I want you to get ready, because according to the Torah, oh, but wait a minute, they don't believe in Yeshua, so that's illegal. Where in the world does it say in Deuteronomy 16 and 17 that the requirement for a judge of Israel is to believe in Yeshua for him to do his job as a judge? That's this. Think about it, it's ridiculous. I mean, it's like me going to say to a doctor, says, do you believe in Yeshua? Do you follow Torah? Do you keep the feast? No, then you are not a valid doctor to take care of my problem. I mean, that's what we come to now. That we now we set the structure and foundation to say, I am not going to the temple because those priests may not believe in Yeshua. Wait a second. When you read Exodus 28 all the way to 38, there's not one requirement that says, I will anoint you, I would ordain you, and I will sanctify you only if you believe in Yeshua. Did that happen in the book of Exodus? Their job is their job. It would be great, obviously, if they believe in Yeshua, don't get me wrong, but for them to do their job according to the Torah, they don't need to believe in Yeshua, but they should, because Yeshua will be here and they will recognize he's the Messiah, so they will believe in him. I mean, we are so messed up. But when I mention the stuff, they don't hear. All they hear is Sanhedrin, and they go Jews and rabbinical Judaism. And that's how much lack of understanding, because of our biases and because of our hurts, we don't want to submit. So, who determines the new moon? Is that going to be one of the questions?
Oh yeah.
Do you think I haven't done this enough times to know what's coming? So let me ask you a question. Let's go to Numbers 28. Now remember, who are the judges according to the Torah? Priests, Levites, and men of Israel, right? Okay, so the judges are the priests and the Levites, and the judge will be in the office. So what is the structure of a Sanhedrin council what is the requirement in the for them to render? Because there are different levels of jurisdiction. For example, an Israelite judge can now render a judgment on things of matter of the temple. Okay, and you need to understand this. Okay, so anything related to the area of the holy things in the temple, an Israelite can now render a judgment on it, because there are different levels of holiness. For example, I'll give you a prime example of this. Any lawyers in the house here? Any lawyers?
No.
Okay. Anybody that studied law?
Yeah, a couple.
Would you go to a civil case lawyer to take care of your criminal law case? But they're lawyers. How about a divorce lawyer to take care of a capital punishment, capital murder case? But they're lawyers, so I don't understand. Why can't you just use one lawyer for everything? Thank you. Exactly. The same thing happened in the temple. The Levites specialize in administrative things, the choirs, facilitating. That's what Numbers 18 tells us, that God will use the Levites to facilitate and work for the priests. The priests, they are in charge of anything that is holy in certain area of the temple. The feast, the new moon, the holy things. They're the ones that render judgment. So the Sanhedrin, Sanhedrin, or the Great Assembly, was divided into three groups. We have 71 people, according to Numbers, according to Exodus, and according to the book of Deuteronomy. We have a Sanhedrin council made up of 71 people. Now, they have to be divided up into three groups. The Torah doesn't say that, but it doesn't have to if you understand what levels of holiness are. Basically, you're saying you're going to be a divorce lawyer, you're going to be this, and you're going to be this. Okay, so the priests were the ones that could only render judgment on new moon and the feast, the sacrifices on the altar, and anything related to the inner sanctum. The Levites were there to facilitate administration. the choir, they prepare the utensils, they did certain things. Israelites, they took care of little legal matters of differences or cases that did not involve anything that dealt with the sacrifices in the temple. Okay, so therefore you have now legal jurisdictions. And the problem that we have is that if God gave the Sanhedrin Council a court cases, experts in law, and it tells you what is required of that judge, and allows you to put everything in its proper category of these are the holy things, and the priest will do it. So let's go to Ezekiel chapter. We're going to come back to Numbers. Oh, no, actually, no. Let's go to Numbers chapter 18. I could give you a quick answer, but it would not be a fair answer. I'd rather give you a long answer that you know exactly where I'm at. So when people go around tell you, oh, Rico's rabbinical, he don't believe in Yeshua, you can just stop them and say, you got to go, you don't know what you're talking about. Because I'm being canceled in certain circles in Tennessee because I don't subscribe to the same nonsense everyone is doing. And not because I'm better than anybody else. It's just that I'm taking the time to study certain things that we refuse to study because of anti-Jewish sentiment. And that's a fact. That is a fact. We want salvation from a Jew, Yeshua. We want redemption from the Jew, Yeshua. We want eternal life through the Jew, Yeshua. He lived as a Jew. He prayed as a Jew. He walked as a Jew. But God forbid, if we wear talit katan and not put it on the belt loops, people get bent out of shape. And I'm going to say it. This is such an arrogant attitude we have. When we showed up yesterday, we just showed up yesterday. We haven't been through anything. We can't even agree with each other. And we can't even meet one time with each other during the feast. And these people have been suffering 3,700 years. We just showed up yesterday. And now we're telling them where to meet, when to pray, and don't worry about those prayers. That's too Jewish. We don't want to do. I don't agree everything in Judaism. I'm not following modern Judaism. There's a complete difference between modern Judaism and biblical understanding of the Torah. But it's interesting that when I go to Israel, I don't have any issues with any Orthodox. And I believe in Yeshua. And they know I believe Yeshua is divine. And they know that I believe Yeshua is pre-existent. And they know Yeshua is that I believe Yeshua is Messiah. And they know that I believe Yeshua is from the beginning. And they know Yeshua is Ben Adam. And they know that I tell them Yeshua is all those things. And I don't have a problem with them. But I have problems with believers in Yeshua in the kingdom. So what is wrong here? I don't get it. So someone is missing a link. I'm not saying I'm not. I'm trying to pursue it. So let's look into what God says. Whom did God give the authority for sacred space? Remember, the new moon, the feast, and the commandments of the temple, they are sacred space. Who has the legal authority to render judgment on those things? We're going to go to Numbers 18. Then we're going to go to Ezekiel 44, verse 23, 24. And we're going to let the Bible speak. Okay? Before we read these verses, I want to ask you guys a general question. I want to see one verse in the New Testament that Yeshua said not to listen to the Torah and the rulings coming from Jerusalem after resurrection. And even resurrection, did Yeshua had an issue with the Sanhedrin Council, or did he have issues with the rulings of certain people within the Sanhedrin Council that was against the spirit of the Torah? But in order to answer that, you need to know how many rulings did Shammai try to push down the throats of people oppressing the people versus Hillel. Because when he says about Pharisees, he's not talking about all Pharisees. And what was really the issue? Moral law or ritual law? What's the distinction? What is temple ritual law versus Torah moral law? How were they applying it? Good questions, right?
Mhm.
So therefore, if we don't know those things, we're not going to get a broader perspective of the arguments Yeshua is having. So let's read in Numbers 18.
Starting right at chapter 1. Or verse 1.
Verse 1. Yes, sir.
Yahweh spoke to Moses in the desert of Sinai, in the tent of assembly on the first of the month, in the second year after they came out of. Oh, no, forgive me. Yeah, it jumped on me. This program is fun, that logo software.
Yeah, you could read it on the
Oh,
screen.
there it is. I can see that far. There we go. Yahweh said to Aaron, you and your sons and your family with you will bear the guilt of the sanctuary, and you and your sons with you will hear the guilt of your priesthood.
Okay, stop there.
Yes, sir.
And I'm going to ask you guys a question. What does that verse means? Because once I understood that verse, then I understood God's order and why we have to follow certain things. Let's open it up. I'm interested to see. Read up to verse 4, and then we open into verse 5, and then we open the conversation here real quick. I'm curious.
Moreover, bring your brothers with you, the tribe of Levi, the tribe of your father, that they may be joined to you and minister to you, you and your sons with you before the tent of testimony. They will keep your responsibility and the responsibility of the tent, only they may not come near the vessels of the sanctuary and the altar, so both of you, and they will not die. They will be joined to you, and they will keep the responsibility of the tent of assembly for the entire service of the tent. A stranger may not come near you.
Okay, keep going.
You will keep the responsibility of the sanctuary and the responsibility of the altar, and there will no longer be wrath on the Israelites.
Let's look at the word stranger in the Hebrew. It's the Hebrew word zar. The word zar, strange, different, illicit, unauthorized, an unauthorized person. Keep that in mind as we read it, non-Israelite or unauthorized. So that God sets up structure here. Let's open it up. And the Lord said to Aaron, you and your sons, your family with you will bear the iniquity, the guilt. The word guilt there is avon, misdeed, sin, guilt caused by sin, punishment. People want to be priests in the order of Melchizedek. Are you ready for the punishment when you mislead people? Are you ready to carry the punishment? You change the feast, you bear the guilt. And we want to be priests in the order of Melchizedek? When I found this out, I reverted everything I taught about this, and I repented to God, and I said, I will never teach that again. Because I understood law. We are so brazen to think that we can tell God now that we are priests in an order he never ordained for us. Only Yeshua in the heavenly tabernacle. No wonder we're confused. So let me ask you guys a question before we open it up. How much time do you dedicate? Me pongo un poquito de agua, amor. Yeah, see. How much time have we dedicated on temple studies this past year? I'm going to challenge you a little bit. You call me to ask me questions. I deserve the right to do so back. And I don't mind the questions. I think it's great because this gives you a really deeper understanding where I'm coming from, how I'm thinking. And then you can be a witness when somebody asks you about me. You can tell them, no, we ask him questions. You need to go listen to what he's saying so that you understand the whole scope of things. So let's open it up real quick. Who can tell me what they think about this verse 1? Remember, the guilt is avon, is a sin. Go ahead. Can I hear very well?
The people are saying that they don't spend enough time studying the temple, but basically the majority of us have seen through most of your temple conferences.
Cool. So what do you understand by that particular verse?
You're passing the mic, so hang on just a second, Rico.
What I understand from verse 1 of 18 would be that the responsibility, i.e. the authority, belongs to Aaron and his sons for the sanctuary and for their priesthood.
Correct. Correct. That means that if they render a judgment that is incorrect, they bear the responsibility. How do we know this? When we go to the previous verses, go ahead and read from verse 8. Remember, in chapter 17, you have the staff of the 12 tribes, and the one that came with the blossom of almonds was the staff of Moses. Before that, you have the censers, because the people were questioning the authority that God placed on the sons of Aaron. Now think about that. And the Lord calls it rebellion. Look, can you read verse 8 forward, please?
Yes, sir. Then the next day Moses went into the tent of testimony, and behold, the staff of Aaron of the house of Levi blossomed and put forth the flower and produced the blossoms, and it produced almonds. Then Moses brought it out to all the Israelites, all the staffs before the presence of Yahweh, and they saw, and each man took his staff. And Yahweh said to Moses, bring back the staff of Aaron before the testimony as a guard and a sign to the children of rebellion, and let them finish their grumblings before me and not die. So Moses did just as Yahweh commanded him, so he did. And the Israelites said to Moses, saying, look, we will die, we will be destroyed, all of us will perish. Anyone who approaches the tabernacle of Yahweh will die.
Okay, so here we go. So anyone who approaches the tabernacle will die, and God calls anyone like Korah who approach and trying to do the job that God told Aaron to do, and his family died. And the word children of rebellion, what is the word rebellion? It should be avon. No, merib, worse, contentiousness, rebellion against God. Is that what we're doing now? We're basically usurping God's authority, telling them that we're not going to respect anything that God says through certain people just because we don't like the religious affiliation. It's not about religion, guys. Once I understood this has nothing to do with religion. This is about law. And by the way, if a priest, and this is the reason why the new moon was such a big deal. The new moon was a big deal because for the feast, it sets off the feast. So therefore, God says, and it's connected to the sacrificial system. So God said, it has to be from Jerusalem. And God is so wise that he connects Passover with the time of the year so that you will not miss the time of the year for Passover. It has to happen in the spring. So the new moon, when it's connected with the Aviv, and not just anybody can declare the Aviv because it's connected with the temple and the sacrifices. So it's regulated to the priest, not to just any crazy guy in the corner. Because if it's Aviv, then the new moon is the one that sets up the spring. If it's not Aviv, then I don't care how many calendars you follow, you are not to start the Passover counting until then. So Rico, wait a minute. So why do we follow the rabbinical calendar or the Hillel calendar? Because the last Sanhedrin council, they were going to be thrown out of Israel or die. They met and they said, we need to keep order for the kingdom of God and the kingdom of Israel around the nations. They always kept the counting. I have a book. I have this book. This book has the counting of the calendar already by counting the days until the year 2100. It tells me the day of my birthday. You know, when in my 100th year, when I'm 100 years old, you know, my birthday falls on the Passover night. I was born on the first day of unleavened bread. In other words, they always counted it. You have to. It's simple. The moon cycle is 29. It cannot go more than 30 days. So they always counted the cycle. The tricky part was you need to see it to make sure you validate it. And for the feast, you need to have the agricultural cycle go in sync with it to know what times of the year. If you do not follow this agricultural cycles, then you're going to have Passover fall all the way in May. That's no longer spring. Okay, so before they got thrown out of the land of Israel, they say, We've been counting the months, and there was a Sanhedrin council, although there was no temple, but because there was a body of, leadership or there, they said, let's set the calendar, set it, right? And sometimes it's one day off. And I know it's one day off. So how can we justify it when we should be doing it in the other day, in the other day? Because there's no temple, there's no altar, and the Passover is based on a sacrificial system, and that's only regulated for the priests. So God does something really well. He says, okay, guys, your tendency is to want to challenge my authority. So you are not going to be able to approach me because you die. He says it right here. Anybody who approaches the tabernacle will die. So I'm going to let the sons of Aaron, whom God chose, to take all the responsibility for you. If they mess up, they bear the guilt. You just live your lives. You live your lives, and they will take care of the times and seasons. But they better be on point, because if they mess up, everyone shows up the wrong day, they're guilty, because they're the ones who will be zealous to do what is right for me. That's what people are asking if they want to become priests in the order of Melchizedek. Are you really willing to die for the kingdom? Because it says it right there. Let's continue. In verse 2, moreover, bring your brothers with you, the tribe of Levi, the tribe of your father, that they may be joined with you and minister to you, and you and your sons with you before the tent of meeting. Now, verse 3, they will keep your responsibility and the responsibility of all the tent. Only, these are the Levites, only they may not come near the vessels of the sanctuary and the altar, so both you and they will not die. Anytime somebody changes a calendar, I wonder, are they willing to take the responsibility to what they've done? That is holy things. The feasts are holy. Now, what is the duty of Israel? To proclaim or to decree? Go. That's my question to you. What is your responsibility as Israel? To proclaim or to decree?
The room is yelling out proclaim.
How can we prove that? Show me in the Bible.
We have another one saying, no, they decree, don't they? No, wait, sorry. The priests decree, but the people proclaim.
Yes.
There we go.
It's Leviticus 23. Sorry, I went to Numbers. Are you guys enjoying yourself okay?
Yes.
sir.
Okay, cool. I want to thank you for at least asking. That's great. Go ahead and read verse 1, please, and 2, please.
Then Yahweh spoke to Moses, saying, speak to the Israelites and say to them, the festivals of Yahweh you shall proclaim are holy assemblies. These are my appointed times.
So why do we change them? They're not ours. It's like me going to your house and changing your special days, your birthdays and your anniversaries. And no, I came to your house. I do whatever I want now. Oh, you're not going to cook because I don't like the way you cook. I'm going to cook for you. And by the way, your bed where you sleep, you're going to kick out of that. I'm going to go to the guest bedroom because I'm going to sleep in your bed. I could go into your most holy area in your house. That's exactly what we do when we came in. Oh, the Holy Holies? We can go there. We are priests in the order of Melchizedek now. Well, where's the ordination? Where is the consecration? And where is the anointing of that priesthood in the Bible? I can find it for Aaron and his sons. Where is it for the Melchizedek priesthood? There has to be an ordination, a consecration, and there has to be a sanctification. There had to be a rite of passage of a meal, covenantal meal. And by the way, they were waved before the Lord by the altar. What did that even happen with the Melchizedek priesthood? Yeshua never ordained a Melchizedek priesthood. Did he? I don't see it anywhere. Nowhere in the Bible. Guys, we're in trouble. We're in trouble. I mean, how many things have I mentioned already that you probably never considered before? I can't say 90% of the stuff without first establishing a whole foundation. What do you think I've been doing the last 10 years? The whole 10 years, I've been trying to slowly establish a foundation to the point that people will learn about a hierarchy. They will learn about sacred spaces. They will learn about the temple. They will learn about first century cultural backgrounds. They will learn about ancient Near East. But it doesn't matter what I teach. The moment I say something Jewish, now I'm rabbinical, I'm moving away from Yeshua. That's the level of immaturity that sometimes we have, because we assume and we think that we are so desperately needed to defend Yeshua that we throw away everything Yeshua came to defend. We want to defend Yeshua to the point that we ended up presenting a Yeshua exactly the way we came back from the church. Now, it's not enough to say Yeshua is divine, pre-existent from the beginnings and before the foundation of the world. And I believe that because he said it. Please restore my honor that I had with you before the world was. Okay, so I believe Yeshua is before all creation because he told me. If he lied to me, then he lied to me, but I don't think he did. But now people are taking away his father's throne. And they have taken Yeshua and kicked the father out and put Yeshua on the father's throne. I can't go for that. The Bible does not support that. The one who gave him the authority was the Father. And the authority the Father gave him to rule on the earth. He will rule. Amen. Okay, so let's go to verse 44. Verse 44. Read in
Thus-
your translation.
We're reading off your screen.
No, I know, but this one's a different, this particular gave a different translation. Can you read it of your translation real quick?
Yes, sir. Leviticus chapter 23, verse 44. Thus did Moshe speak of the appointed times of Yahweh to the children of Israel.
Right, but who was Moses? Wasn't he the leader of the whole camp? Wasn't he the leader of the whole camp?
Yep.
So that means that he was the head of the 70 elders. So he decreed it because God gave him the authority to do so. If he would have messed up on it, then he bears the guilt. Did that make sense to you guys?
Mm-hmm.
So we do have, our job is to proclaim it. That's why we do in the Kiddush. Why do you think we do the blessings of the Kiddush? I find it really interesting that they do the Kiddush, they raise the bread and they raise the wine and they give God the blessing for the bread and the wine, and that's good. But they don't do the Kiddush. Oh, but that's rabbinical, Rico. Let me show you how rabbinical it is. Let's go to Exodus chapter 20. Exodus chapter 20. Verse 4. Can you read it for me? I'm sorry. Verse 8, please.
Remember the day of the Sabbath to consecrate it.
Stop. To consecrate it. What does that mean? To make it holy. To make it holy, right? So how do we consecrate it? I mean, is there a prayer that says consecrate it? It says, remember the Sabbath and make it holy, right? How do you make it holy? That's the question that I asked myself about 10 years ago. Because about 15 years ago, I used to do things according to the way I wanted to do that. And I began to study with Joseph Good, and I'm thinking, wait a minute, he asked me the question, how do you consecrate? I went like, oh, snap, I don't know. So the body of judges that God ordained, they said, well, we need to consecrate it. How do we do that? Okay, so we consecrate it by proclaiming God, our Redeemer, and our Creator. So it's called the Kiddush. When we do the Kiddush, before the meal, we do the Sabbath meal. And by the way, even in the simple things, sometimes we have a tough time understanding it because we're not exposed to these things. But I want to read it to you. If I can find it now, because I have a different siddur here. Give me a second. Sabbath Eve, and you have the Kabbalah Shabbat, which is the reception of Shabbat. Then you sing some psalms, the Chadodi, which is the bride and the groom. Here we are, the bride of Messiah, but we don't really do what the Chadodi is, a poem about, the restoration of those things. Man, where is it? I'm trying to find it. Give me a second. $342. Give me a second. Give me 1 second. Oh man, I'm so sorry. My wife says I sound mad. I'm not mad at all, by the way. She said, "You sound like you're mad." I said, "Nah, not even close." I said, "Oh man, maybe I gotta smile a little bit more. I don't want people to think I'm mad."
No, we appreciate your passion and your zeal for it.
Yeah, it's like
That's why we wanted to talk to you. We wanted serious. Look, this
No.
is serious. So,
Yeah.
you
See-
need to yell at us.
But sometimes I get all excited. I don't want to sound mad. I'm not mad at all.
No, you're fine.
Okay, check
Some
this
of
out.
us have seen you lay down the law on Tito on the wrestling mat. We've seen you angry. We know better than to mess with that.
And I try to take it easy on him, but he beats me up too. All right, so check this out. I'm going to read it. I got to translate it. So this is how this is how the Sanhedrin Council, they came up based on this commandment to sanctify it. Also in Leviticus, let's go to Leviticus 19:30. Go ahead and read it right there for me.
You shall keep my Sabbaths and you shall revere my sanctuary. I am Yahweh.
All right, let's go to chapter 26, verse 2.
You shall keep my Sabbaths and you shall revere my sanctuary. I am Yahweh.
Okay. Okay, so that connection between you shall keep my Sabbath and also revere my sanctuary, which is the Mishkan, the Mikdash.
Mikdash.
Okay, so it can apply to the tabernacle and the temple because that's the Beit HaMikdash, the house of the presence. Because of that connection, that's why the table of Shabbat has been set up the way it has. So they say, okay, so we are commanded to consecrate it. How do we do that? Well, the Sabbath is the only day in Hebrew and in Greek that has a name on it. The Romans, they put a name to every day of the week. So there's a distinction. Yom Rishon, Yom Shni, Yom Shlishi, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, Shabbat. And Greek is the same way, Shabbaton, okay? Okay, so God says, I want to bring you into my sacred space. I want to honor you to sit at my table. I want to invite you into the microcosm of the millennial reign. I want you to proclaim who I am to you and to your family. And if you do that, I will restore your family. I will provide the meal. So the whole Shabbat table is a teaching about God's messianic kingdom and his full restoration, how your whole family will be restored, your honor will be restored. And the only thing we need to do, proclaim that he is king. Watch. On the sixth day, were created the heavens and the earth and everything in it. Adonai completed in the seventh day the work that he had done, and he ceased on the seventh day from the work that he had done. Adonai blessed the seventh day and sanctified it. So they connected, you shall sanctify the Sabbath. That's because God sanctified it and he called Adam to keep it holy. So now we are welcome into God's kingdom to maintain his holiness, not to change his holy things. All right. And he says, and the labor for the labor that God had created, that he had created. I'm translated. Says, okay. Dios había creado para hacer. That God already did in creation. Then you do the blessing of the wine. Because he's your gardener, remember? He planted a vineyard in the garden. Okay? So you bless God for the wine. Blessed are you, O Lord our God, King of the universe, who provides the fruit of the vine. Now he is your patron. He provides for your daily needs. Then you do the next part of the blessing, goes like this. Blessed are you, O Lord our God, King of the universe. You just proclaim that he's the king of your home and the king of the universe. He is the creator. He's the one who called you into his table so that you could proclaim who he is amongst the nations. And it says, who has sanctified us with his commandments and he has found favor in us and he has made us inherit with love and kindness his holy Shabbat, a remembrance of the works of creation, the beginning of the holy convocations, a remembrance of the redemption from Egypt, and your holy Shabbat you have given us as a heritage with love and loving kindness. Blessed are you, O Lord, who sanctifies the Shabbat. And then the next step is you bless your children. And then you wash your hands. You bless your children, then you wash your hands. Why do we wash our hands? There's a psalm that says, who shall ascend the mountain of the Lord? Those with clean hands and a clean heart. When I wash my hands, I'm basically saying, Lord, I'm about to eat of your bread. I'm about to eat of your table. I'm about to eat of your sacred space. Am I worthy enough to sit at your table? Am I innocent of guilt? Have I oppressed the needy? Have I taken care of the homeless? Have I oppressed other people? Is there idolatry in my heart? Am I worthy to sit here and proclaim and eat of the holy things that you've given me? Once to do the blessing of the washing of the hands, which is actually taken from the temple. When they used to do the worship in the temple, they have to wash their hands and feet. So that's where they got it from. And then after that, you raise the bread. You put salt on the bread because God is making covenant with you and your table. And then he said, you blessed him for the bread, for the providing you. What's wrong with that? Our job is to proclaim who he is. Our job is to proclaim that he is the one who sets us apart. But there has to be an order. You know, I have a 31-year-old and I have a 25-year-old. They got married. Now, great godly women, amazing godly women. And when I was 25 years old, I know where I was doing in the world. When I was 31 years old, I came to the Lord when I was 32. And I still remember what I was doing. I still remember what I was doing in the world. I surrendered when I was 32 years old, again, completely. And I cannot believe God restored my family when I didn't deserve it to be. I have a 31-year-old man, 25-year-old young man, now they're married, and they want to be here. And when we get to the blessing of the children, those two married grown men, they stand up in front of their wives and they come to me for me to bless them. And when their children are born, the thing keeps repeating itself. Why can't we follow that order? I don't understand. It's what kept Israel alive for the last 2,000 years. We are so wounded by the religions that we reject everything that's trying to heal us, because we put a sticker of identity on it that we don't want to be associated with. So really, are we anti-Semitic and we don't even know it? Something to think about. I told him I wasn't mad. Okay, gracias. Oh, check it out. My wife got me some good tea, but look what it says, 10C. That's the reason God is good. I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for my wife. Any leader, you need to know this, any leader who you're gonna let lead must be first a good husband and a good father. If it's not a good husband and a good father, don't listen to anything he says. Walk away. Because the same thing he does to his wife and his children, he'll do to you. Remember that. The same thing goes for, and I gave this advice to my children. I said, you get to know the young lady, study the Torah for 1 year with her. 5 books of Moses for 1 year. Study together. You're going to get to know a lot about her. She's going to get to know a lot about you. Because in Genesis, you have to confront the fact who the creator is of the universe. If science and evolution and doubting God as creator, you can just get rid of her or get rid of him. By the time Exodus comes around, she has to believe and he has to believe that it's God who brings judgment from oppression and the consequences of disobeying the covenant that led Israel into oppression. And what happened in the wilderness when the people would not obey? By the time you get to Leviticus, oh Lord, all the rules are there. If she says, oh, I like my pork and I'm going to eat my pork chops, no matter what God says, after you read what God says in regards to food, then don't think you can change her when you marry her or when you marry him. It ain't going to happen. Things magnified 1,000-fold when you get married. Okay? When you get to the book of Numbers, you're going to learn about the consequences of rebellion. God's structure of order. And what happens? When you get to Deuteronomy, it's like, if we don't obey, we're going to be like the first generation. We're not entering the kingdom. You know, those circumcised of the heart will get in. Leaders should be accountable. Sometimes we think we're above it. That's why I'm meeting with you guys. You think I want to meet here in the morning at 8 o'clock in the morning after 23 years of ministry? I could have easily said, hey, brother, you know what? I've been doing this long enough. Go see my videos. I know a few guys have done that. Hey, where'd you get your resources? Well, no, I don't need to give you resources. That's a Greek mindset. No, I owe it to the audience where I get my stuff, why I'm thinking the way I do it. I don't want you to trust me. We're going to work together. We're going to trust God. You need to trust God. You don't need to trust me. Now, you know who I trust by the actions that I do. Based on my conduct and my behavior, then you know that I'm trusting the same God you do. Then we can work together. We have this mindset that we're going to give ourselves and our hearts to some leader, and sometimes they don't appreciate us. Because we're trusting them, we're not trusting God, that God will give them and equip them to lead us. How many verses have I given you already? That's the telltale sign. When you have a leader who's willing to be accountable, he's not afraid to get themselves out of the equation and let the Bible speak for itself. Because ultimately, at the end, you and I work for the same Elohim. And you and I, we just have different roles. That's it. Okay, so let's go to Ezekiel. We were talking about authority, right? Can you read verse 23 and 24 right here, brother?
Yes, sir.
Wait a minute, am I in the right chapter? Let me see if I'm in the right book. Okay. Oh, I always do that. It's 44. I apologize. 44 verse, read 15 for me. Right here.
But the Levitical priests, the descendants of Zadok, who cared for the responsibility of my sanctuary, when the Israelites went astray from me, they will approach me to serve me, and they will stand before me to offer me fat and blood, declares the Lord Yahweh. They shall come to my sanctuary, and they shall approach my table to serve me, and they will observe my requirement.
Well, isn't this in the millennial reign? Don't we believe that? That's the third temple. So how can we be priests in the order of Melchizedek when God already chose his priests already? And it says the Levitical priests, the descendants of Zadok. Okay, so verse 24 and 23. Remember, who are the people doing this? Go ahead.
And they will teach my people the little flag on the mouse is covered.
Oh, I apologize.
The difference between what is holy and what is unholy, and the difference between unclean and clean, they must show them. And at a legal dispute, they themselves shall stand to judge. Employing my judgments, they shall judge it. And with respect to my laws and my statutes, all my festivals they shall keep, and my Sabbaths they shall consecrate.
Who consecrates them?
The priests.
Are we priests in the order of the sons of Aaron? I will ask again. Are we priests now in the order of Aaron?
That's a no from the room.
Right. So why are we changing the feast when God himself said they consecrated, not us? We proclaim them. And by the way, with the condition that if they mess up, God is not going to hold me my guilt. I proclaim what God told the people to consecrate. God is so, look, the Lord is so graceful. Because if he would have given us this responsibility, we would have killed each other for the power. And God said, I chose the sons of Aaron. They have the authority, but they have the deep responsibility that if they mess up, if they get corrupt, they will die, and anybody attached to them. That should scare you a little bit. Let me ask you another question. What is the difference between holy and unholy, clean and unclean? That's what the duty of Israel is not to set the feast, is not to change the temple, is not to change the name. Isn't the name holy?
Yes.
Why do we change it? Do we have the authority to change anything holy?
Not at all.
It is so holy that even the Jews have gone to an extreme. We don't even want to pronounce it. I'm not saying I agree with it. I'm just saying they don't want to pronounce it because they understand the holiness. We do not understand holy and profane, so we change everything without the proper authority and jurisdiction. That's the scary part. We don't have the authority or jurisdiction to do so. That's the scary part. Now, let's go to Numbers 28. Why is it that I follow what I follow? And I'll be done here in a minute. We can take another question. But if I don't do this foundation, we're going to be back and forth. I guarantee you every other question will be basically attached to this. That's a beautiful thing about experience. Because everything else will be attached to it. So can you read read 1 through verse 7. And I want you to focus a lot on verse 6, okay?
Okay. Yahweh spoke to Moses, saying, command the Israelites and say to them, you will be careful to present my offering, my food, and of my offerings made by fire, fragrance of appeasement to me at its appointed time. You will say to them, this is the offering made by fire that you will offer to Yahweh. 2 male lambs without defect in their first year as a continual burnt offering each day. You will offer 1 male lamb in the morning, and the second male lamb you will offer at twilight, and 1/10 of an ephah of finely milled flour as a grain offering, mixed with 1/4 of a measure of beaten oil. It is a continual burnt offering that was ordained on Mount Sinai as a fragrance of appeasement, an offering made by fire to Yahweh.
Okay, where was this ordained?
Mount Sinai.
Awesome.
It was asa, to make, manufacture, and do on Mount Sinai. So the reason why I mention this is because eventually the altar will be restored, and they're going to put the daily offering, and many people within the Hebrew roots will speak against that. And this was ordained on Mount Sinai, which we circle back to Hanukkah. Hanukkah is actually the restoration of this commandment. By dedicating the altar, they established the daily offering again, thus establishing the authority of God and his kingship on his throne in Jerusalem. So now you choose which one you want to keep. Observe a national holiday commemorating the restoration of God's temple and the restoration of the commandment, which is the ordained that was ordained on Mount Sinai by the daily offerings, or justifying Christians because they don't know any better. And we need to love them to the point that I'm going to sit under the Christmas tree, and I'm being sarcastic, and I'm going to do it because I need to show them love. No, I need to show them that I'm loyal to God and I'm tolerant to know that they don't understand the truth, and I'm going to share it with them in context. I'm not going to compromise my values of honoring God and his holy spaces because I want to appease my family who don't care about what I do. I mean, if you have a homosexual in your family, a former criminal, a convict, a prostitute, a slanderer, or you can have somebody who's a crook, he's your family member. You still got to love them because you got to tolerate them because that's his lifestyle until you keep the Sabbath and the feast. Then they don't want to tolerate us and they don't want to respect our lifestyle. And the sad thing is we compromise the values of God to appease people that don't care about our values. No, I'm going to keep my values, but you don't celebrate Hanukkah? Not a problem. I'll see you on the 26th. Have fun in your Christmas. I don't need a gift. Don't worry about me. I'm going to keep my family. I'm going to celebrate God's sacred space because I'm celebrating the day when a remnant stood up for the zeal of the temple, restored, sanctified it, purified it, and restored the authority of God that he ordained on Mount Sinai. It's not about the legend. It's about restoration, God's power and honor. And it's sad that if I made a post about Hanukkah, and oh Lord, people who follow Torah attacking me for Hanukkah. And I'm going like, wow. And Hanukkah is about the restoration of the altar that took 8 days. And then they put the daily sacrifice that was ordained on Mount Sinai. God did it. Let's go to 28:11. Go ahead, brother.
And at the beginning of each of your months, you will present a burnt offering for Yahweh, 2 bulls and 1 ram, 7 male lambs without defect in their first year, and 3/10 of finely milled flour mixed with oil for a grain offering for each bull, and 2/10 of finely milled flour mixed with oil for a grain offering for the 1 ram, and 1/10 of finely milled flour mixed with oil as a grain offering for each male lamb, and for a burnt offering of a fragrance of appeasement, an offering of fire for Yahweh. Their libations will be half a liquid measure of wine for the bull, 1/3 of a liquid measure of wine for the ram, and 1/4 of a liquid measure of wine for the male lamb. And this is the burnt offering for every month for the months of the year.
Okay,
Oh,
that's fine. Can we do that today?
No.
So how can we declare the new moon when it's attached to the sacrificial system? And the one who consecrates the feast? We read it in Ezekiel. Who consecrates the feast?
The priests.
Okay. Do we have an altar today in Jerusalem? No. Do we have a Sanhedrin today? No. Do we have the red heifer? We got them. I saw the pictures. I know the people. I'm going to see them soon. So how can we declare the new moon, even if you are right? Let me give you an example. It happened in Wyoming. This guy came to me and said, hey, would you like allow me to share with you about the new moon? I said, sure. And the guy, honestly, he did a great job. By the way, hold on a minute. Everything he talked about, I read in this book, but he don't know that. He didn't know that. Okay. And he did an amazing job. And by the way, it even tells you right here. Let me see if I find it. It's really revealing what you hear. They even tell you in this book that they know. There we go. Here we go. Listen to what it says. In the introduction, it says, both of this mitzvot, which is the donation of the half shekel and the new moon, and the sanctification of the new moon, are connected with Mashiach and the future redemption. For it is in that area that the communal sacrifices will be renewed, and it is then that we will return to the sanctification of the new moon on the basis of its sighting. They know that when Messiah returns, everything will be restored to the original place, because the temple will be restored, the priesthood will be restored, the offerings will be restored, because the new moon is based on the sighting, on the sacrificial system, and the feast, Passover, based on the Aviv. They know when Messiah returns, everything will be restored. But so the guy explained everything in the calculations, just like the book says. And I told him, brother, I agree 100%. My question to you is this. Do you have the legal jurisdiction to change and declare? He goes, well, no. And then he started laughing. He caught on to it. Just because he was right in his calculations, which even the rabbis agree, he doesn't have the legal authority to change it because God already established that structure. Did that make sense?
Yes.
I'm not saying that there's not some issues with the calendar, but God gave that authority to the priests. And they were the ones who declared the last Sanhedrin council. They're the ones who say, for the sake of the order, that's the last hope we got. Let's follow the record, the counting that we know happens every 30 days. When Messiah returns, it will get it all fixed. But in the meantime, we need order. That's what's kept Israel alive all these years. And it's amazing that sometimes it's just by one day off. Incredible. These guys already, they were such good mathematicians that even now, sometimes it's one day off. Oh, but the Aviv, this year, it fell on the same day. Interesting. Something to think about. So, okay. So I think I'm done with that. And I'm open for more questions. Thank you for the listen, thank you for the long introduction, because I know everything's going to come from here. So at least now you know what I'm thinking. If I don't give you this foundation, we're going to go back and forth arguing, and I have better things to do. I don't want to argue. I want to help each other so we can understand one another instead of argue all the time. Hope that makes sense. Go ahead, brother.
Yes. Okay, so in light of that, after the destruction of the temple, the great assembly that ended up to, what was it, like 350 or so, 400, where did they get their authority, and how do we know that they had the authority to establish these things? Because many come against that.
Well, the thing is that no one can be in the Sanhedrin council unless there was somebody laid hands on them. And I wasn't there, but I know the responsibility that deals with that. So these people are not, listen, if I tell you whatever decisions that you make may be your life, you may not want that job. So it's like, you got to make sure that if you're going to be on this body of judges, that you're going to be worthy. That's the issue. That's the issue Yeshua was telling them. You don't understand. You're hypocrites. You're trying to force the people to live a lifestyle according to ritual purity, but inside you're dead bones. He was keeping them accountable to their supposed responsibility they're supposed to have. He didn't have an issue with the office. He said, if you're going to be in the office, you got to have a higher level of accountability. So we do know according to what we have. I wasn't there, so I cannot, but I understand the responsibility, and they have to lay hands on them. That comes all the way from the time of Aaron, when the people waved and they lay hands on them for their ordination. So that was kept going the whole time. In every time, see, if this guy dies, the next guy takes over, they laid hands on him. It happened with the disciples. When they had somebody coming into the community as a leadership, they endorsed. How would anybody know? I mean, they dealt with Paul. How do you know Paul is actually acceptable? I mean, do we need Paul to understand the gospel? No. I mean, do we need Paul to understand about Yeshua? No. The reason why we have Paul is because Paul is trying to teach us about how the first century congregation was dealing with all these amazing Gentiles coming into the faith and the struggle of the transition. But I don't need Paul to know about Yeshua. The gospel did that to me. The Torah does that. The prophets does it. But I need Paul to teach me how to deal with Gentiles and how do they adapt into the kingdom. That's the same problem we have today. We have all those letters teaching us exactly the issues that we go through, and we don't get it. We put Paul above Yeshua the whole time. It's crazy. And I look around, I'm going like, oh my God, now I know exactly what Paul is dealing with. They go do the Ishmael games in Corinth. They go eat meat sacrificed to idols. And then they come sit in the synagogue on Shabbat. Y'all good? You can't do that. You can't drink of the cup of demons and the cup of the Lord right before Passover. That's when the Ishmael games took place. Don't you know that all is permissible to me, but not everything is good? Why did he say that? Because he was a Roman citizen. And in the Greco-Roman world, if you are a Roman citizen, you have the right to go partake of the games and also go eat at the cafeteria of Asclepius, Aphrodite, and Apollo and eat the meat sacrificed to idols. And that's a feast. And they didn't eat meat every day. And Paul says, that's permissible to me because I'm a Roman citizen. I can go do all that stuff as a Roman citizen, but that's not acceptable in the Torah. But if I ask you, have you ever heard of the Ishmael games? Have you ever heard of the Aphrodite and the hundreds of priests of prostitutes they have there? How about the worship of Asclepius and Apollo? We'd be hard pressed to find anybody to really study the context on the background of Corinth. And we, guys, we're lacking. Where is a yeshiva in the Hebrew roots movement? How about a school? How about an intermediate school? How about a kosher Hebrew roots slaughtering house? Come on now, come on. We got questions. I mean, we demand of people, but we don't have any structure. The Jewish people show up to a community, they build a synagogue, they build a school, they build businesses, and they establish community. So they don't have a need for the outside world. We want to get the outside world, and we bring them to what? Arguments, debates, chaos, that we have to justify why I don't keep Christmas, following Torah, to Torah people. I'm not justifying to Christian. I have to justify to Torah people why I don't want to follow Christmas. Oh my God. It's backwards. Okay, questions?
Okay, for those in covenant through Torah, are we to keep and apply Mishnah or Talmud, or what writings, what additional writings beyond Torah?
What do you mean by keep? Let's define that.
Well, to apply it to our lives, like in the Mishnah, we have all these rulings and tradition, so on and so forth. Should we be looking at those? Should we be applying those to our lives and our walk?
Let's go to Acts chapter 5. I think it's 5. Let's try 4. Oh, I'm in the wrong book. No wonder. I will never find it there. I think it's 4 or 3. I'll get there eventually. Here we go. Can somebody please read that verse?
Now Peter and John were going up to the temple at the hour of prayer, the 9th hour. And a
Okay,
certain-
stay there.
Yes, sir.
Let's go to Acts chapter 10. Go ahead and read that, please.
Now there was a certain man in Caesarea named Cornelius, a centurion of what was called the Italian cohort.
Okay, there. Let's go to Luke chapter 1. Verse 8, 9, and 10, please.
And it happened that while he was serving as priest before God in the order of his division, according to the custom of the priesthood, he was chosen by lot to enter the temple of the Lord to burn incense. And the whole crowd of the people were praying outside at the hour of the incense offering.
Well, wait. The whole crowd of the people were praying outside at the hour of incense offering. What were they praying? What time were they praying? Where were they standing? The Bible doesn't tell you. How would you know that? We don't ask that question. What were they praying? What, by the way, what day is it? It doesn't tell you either. There are different prayers. So how will you know what were they doing? Are you going to take it by heart? Now that you guys know about primary sources, secondary sources, correct? So in the Mishnah and the tractate Midot, Tamid, and Yomah was written by Eliezer ben Yaakov. Eliezer ben Yaakov was a priest who lived in the time of Yeshua. He wrote it down. Now, do we study Josephus? Yes. Philo? They lived in that time frame. So therefore, they become primary sources. We may not agree with everything, but they were there. They're writing things from their perspective, but they were there. So if I use the Mishnah because it contains tractates answering the questions of what we just read to get a better understanding how things were done orderly, because you see, John Walton says something really important. He said, the Bible is written for us, but not to us. So I'm from Puerto Rico. I had no idea about the temple when I was a kid. I used to read that verse and I'm going like, oh, he went to pray. In the name of Jesus, I declare and I decree right now. That's what I thought. That's not what you did. In the temple, you don't pray as individuals. In the temple, you pray as one entity. In the temple, there's a protocol. There's a way of behavior, conduct. You enter one way, you exit one way. You don't wear shoes. You don't do certain, well, wait a minute, the Bible doesn't tell you that. Or does it? Yes, it does. But we don't study it because we know Jesus, and that's all I need. And the Bible is telling you more to the information. If we understood the prayers, when we go to Luke chapter 1 and 2, it's talking about the birth, the prophesied birth of John the Baptist. And when somebody appeared, and the whole story here is dealing with Zechariah going into the temple, doing the Shmoneh Esrei Amidah, the 18 benedictions. And there's a blessing there that is actually is the backdrop to the whole story. When you go into Acts chapter 3, verse 1, at the hour of prayer, the 9th hour, What time is that? What time is that?
We've got people saying 3 o'clock.
3 o'clock. Wasn't there a commandment to do a morning and an afternoon offering ordained in Mount Sinai? So therefore, they're following the Torah after Yeshua died and resurrected. They went to the temple to honor the afternoon Tamid, where they used to pray as one people. This is after resurrection. Remember when I read you Numbers 28 and it says it will come back later? Because the Tamid was ordained on Mount Sinai. Interesting, right? This is one proof that they're keeping the Torah after the resurrection. And they're doing the blessings that has been preserved to this day. If you read the Mishnah, the tractate Midot and Tamid, there's actually a tractate named Tamid, which is daily service. It tells you every step they took to do, they did to make sure that the offerings were done correctly. You can basically read Luke chapter 1 and 2 in the service of John of Zechariah, and you know exactly where he was when the angel appeared to him. I see it right now. I know exactly what's going on. I even know exactly where he's standing. So do I use the Mishnah as a resource to understand the backdrop of the Bible from a Jewish source? Absolutely. It's all temple service. The Talmud, however, I have it. It's in the back. It's right behind me above. I have the whole Koran. It's illustrated. Talmud it talks about a lot of the opinions. It has the same thing as the Mishnah, but it expounds on the opinions of the rabbis throughout the ages. That's the Gemara. I read it sometimes just to get an idea what a rabbi was thinking in the 1500s, in the 1200s, in the 1100s, in the 700s, but it's a different time. You know, an opinion of a rabbi from Yugoslavia or Poland from 1900s or the 1800s may not apply to how we live today, although the commandment is the same. Thus, when you go to Israel, you see guys dressed in a particular manner that is completely outside of the culture of Israel and today's dressing. Because someone in the Middle Ages came up with their own ruling as a custom that now they made it a law within their community, but it's not a law according to the Torah, so I don't have to wear that. But we don't know that. By the way, kippas means something in Israel. The one that my brother Shane has means something in Israel. Everyone will see him wearing that. They know where he's from and what he's trying to do. That's why I don't wear the kippas in Israel. I wear hat. Because I don't want to be identified with any group of Judaism. Not that I don't want to, but I'm not in Judaism. If I wear one of the particular kippas, then you better know what they do in that community. Because if you wear it, you identify yourself with them and you bring shame to them if you don't do what they do. That's why I don't do it. Well, no, we just wear kippas for the heck of it. We don't know, oh, I'm just, I'm part of Israel, but I want to do it my way. No, you don't know what you're doing, just don't put one on yet. Because then when you go to Israel and they see you with that, they will assume you know what to do. So I wear my hat. I go to synagogues, wear my hat, they don't tell me anything. Even with wisdom and Torah in it, they don't care. But if I go to their synagogues, which I've been in Itamar, and I've been in Tel Aviv, and I've been in Jerusalem, I do their prayers with them slower, and there's never an issue. Try to do the Ishmoneh Ezra Amidah in a Messianic congregation, in a Hebrew roots congregation, they called you a Judaizer. But yet, John and Peter did it at the hour of prayer. When was the last time we prayed at the hour of prayer? They did it after the resurrection. So yes, I study the Mishnah as a resource to understand how things were done in the temple in the first century. I think it's important because if not, then we're going to miss out a lot. Did I answer your question?
Yes, I believe so.
Go ahead.
Are the 39 prohibitions of work on Shabbat legally binding to our walk?
That's a very good question. I'm still wrestling through those because they've gone to an extreme in its application. And because we don't have a Sanhedrin council, I struggle because I drive on Shabbat. But I'm not driving to and fro making business. I go to the congregation because we don't have community that we can walk to. So because of the lack of order, we just pray to God for the wisdom and for his grace, his mercy, because there's a quandary. Sabbath is a holy convocation. There are rules about how far to go, but it's a holy convocation. We are in the diaspora. This is the problem with the dispersion. Israel, in our disobedience, we have placed ourselves in a position that some things are impossible to observe in our current state. So we just ask to God to help us and continue to move forward until he returns, and then we'll facilitate to do things better. So I guess, have you studied every single one of those restrictions and how they are applied today in Judaism? That's my question. And you could only do that if you lived strictly in an area that allows you to do so. And to be honest with you, I struggle with those, and I don't endorse them today because it will be asking someone to do something that they cannot possibly do. And that will be oppression. Now we go into the realm of legalism. If you don't do it my way, you don't do it this way. Now, if we had, let's say that we have a community and we all live nearby, and we establish a community, a congregation, and that's what many people in the Hebrew roots try to do now. Oh, we want to do, not saying that it's wrong. Their intent is good. We want to get a huge piece of land, and I know at least 5 or 6 leaders that want to do that. I think it's in the beginning is always honorable, but if everyone is not on the same page and there's not a structure of leadership, it always ends up being a dictatorship. It always does. In the last 23 years, I've seen that many, many times, because a leader gets tired of trying to get everyone involved, and then you have to deal with his issues. And if we are wounded, then you're trying to lead a wounded kingdom when you're wounded yourself, and you don't have a mechanism of ministering to you. I mean, it's a mess. So there are certain things that I'm still learning in regards to those, Shane. So I don't want to give you an answer if I'm not 100% sure.
Right, and you could take that community or that situation and take that right back to our local assembly, because it's the same conflict and problem with all the division and chaos and everybody being on a different page. No uniformity, no unity in the body. Would you agree?
Yeah, but you know why we struggle with that is because we do not understand temple administration, roles, gifts. Paul told us the gift of the Spirit, 5-fold ministries. We have one leader wants to do them all. It's impossible. And for example, I've been doing martial arts for 27 years now. And I'm a master in 3, and I'm learning 2 from scratch. And I'm a student of those 2, and I struggle. So I have to go to people who know more than me, although I could apply what they do here. Once I learn the basics, I could blend it into everything else I do to do something different with weapons and whatever. But as I'm learning these 2 systems, I have to submit to the rules and the structure of fundamentals in these 2 systems. So I could have a strong foundation that later I'm able to blend and see how it works perfectly. We don't have that structure within our ranks. Like, for example, I focus on ancient Near East, 1st century cultural background on the temple. Many people don't necessarily respect that, and they criticize it. But yet, What does the administration of the temple look like? Let me put it to you this way. Josephus says there were like 256,000 lambs that were slaughtered 1 year on a Passover in the temple. 256,000. Now, please understand that you cannot keep Passover alone. It's always between a minimum 10 people and 20 people max per group, or more if you have now. Okay, but you have to make sure everyone eats. Let's multiply 256,000 times the minimum number 10. That year in Jerusalem, there were 2 million of them. Wait a second. We found out that in the walls of Jerusalem, in the walls, let me show you, I have the temple app right here. Okay. In the walls, and I'm going to take you outside to it so you can see it. You see, that's a temple building. Now you see that wall in front right here? These wall, not the retaining walls. You see where the cursor is?
Yes.
On the left? That's Herod's retaining wall. This one is the one that is ordained in the Bible, 500 by 500. My teacher has done research that he's going to present to the rabbis that this wall was actually thicker. It contained rooms in it, 10 cubits by 20 cubits, because there's a commandment that is called lina. Lina is that sometimes a sacrifice needs to be eaten either in the city of the temple before the Lord. Before the Lord means inside the sacred space. So we found out that that wall right here contained rooms. So wait a minute, who's going to take care and clean those rooms? Because someone will stay there one night and then somebody else come in. Who organized it? Who made the appointments? Who booked it? Who cleansed them? Who cleansed the whole temple of any trash and the doo-doo of the animals when we're transporting them? It's called temple administration. There were 15 families in charge of all the logistics in the temple. Do you know what they did? How they did it? So what I do, I teach congregations that I'm teaching from scratch, temple administration, and I tell the leader, now you need to develop an administrative unit in your congregation to oversee different roles, delegate it, let them have the authority, you oversee it, and everyone feels like they're valued, they have a role, they have a part of the kingdom, and don't allow people to encroach on each other. I played on the baseball team. I played 6 years of professional baseball. Then I scouted 10 years for the White Sox. I did all about that. I played first base, outfield, and I was a DH. I knew my role. And not the first baseman is not the best player on the team. He could be one of them. But one guy cannot do all 9 positions until we learn that we are a kingdom. And until we learn our gifts, and until we get leadership that is confident in themselves to know that their job is to lead, not to manipulate everyone and micromanage, allow them to do the role, but you have to oversee it. They have to be a structure. We will never succeed anywhere. Now, how come Jewish people succeed everywhere they go? Come on, guys. It's a pedal to the metal. How come the Jewish community, regardless of their condition and observance, but why are they the best musicians, the best doctors, the best lawyers, whatever they put their mind to it, they become the best? Because we are ingrained within our DNA, that structure. And everywhere they go, they follow Torah principles. And every time they go away from their Torah principles, when they assimilate, persecution comes. Because their job is to continue to promote righteousness and justice all over the world, to establish order, God's order. Do your research, you see it. So lack of administrative skills, is the reason why we have chaos. Put it to the test. Anytime you see a ministry that falls, their leaders want to do everything. And I learned early on that I could not get anybody out on the baseball game if the shortstop, the second baseman, if the pitcher doesn't throw the ball, nothing happens. I mean, if the pitcher doesn't throw the ball, a hitter can't hit, the umpire cannot call strikes or balls, catcher cannot catch it, and no one can do anything. Who's the pitcher? Yeshua is the pitcher. We are the team. Man, that came out pretty good. Next question.
Yeah. Is all meat that hasn't been kosher slaughtered considered treifa?
Oh, I'm sorry. Give me a second. Go ahead.
I said, is all meat that hasn't been kosher slaughtered considered treifa?
Repeat that again.
Is all meat that hasn't been kosher slaughtered considered treifa?
Define kosher. No. I'm asking. Define what kosher means to you.
Kosher traditionally has been overseen by a rabbi, and the facilities and the meat and the handling of it and everything else has been done properly and appropriately in a clean manner.
I got you. That's modern day interpretation. But yet, was there anyone there when Abraham do it? When David was there?
Right.
When Solomon was there? What the biblical requirement is, now again, I'm not against kosher slaughtering. But please understand something. That I'd rather eat kosher meat for sure. Because I know it's been raised properly, slaughtered properly. They make sure they examine the lungs, making sure there's nothing wrong with it. There is a procedure of health. I get it. But I think in certain instances, they've gone to an extreme. Especially the prices they charge for the same meat. I have an issue with that. But if we go by biblical requirement alone, you cut the throat, you have to bleed it out. Then it's food. But understand that the koshering requirements in the dispersion due to avodah zarah, strange cults using meats sacrificed to all the idols, there was a need to make a distinction. Paul dealt with that. Paul will tell you, if you know the meat is sacrificed to idols, don't eat it. But then later on he says, yo man, just pray and eat. So that's confusing until, let me ask you guys the question. Have you ever heard of the 10-year famine in the Mediterranean? How many of you, can you put in the chat, how many of you have not heard about the famine in the Mediterranean? 10-year famine? Help me out, guys.
Has that I'm aware of.
Okay, so it was actually prophesied in the book of Acts. The book of Acts talks about that. So the preservation of life comes above everything else. So there was a famine for 10 years in the Greco-Roman world. And Paul now is dealing with preservation of life. Please remember, you will not eat meat every day in the ancient world. That's a modern day thing. They were more based on grains and based on things like that. And there was a problem with the grain from Egypt, and they could not give. Rome was having a tough time giving the monthly allowance for the poor people. And Corinth was also in trouble because of the merchandising. They were not getting a lot of food. So Paul now has to confront something that's very significant: preservation of life. If you know it's been dedicated to idols, don't eat it. It made somebody stumble. But if you don't know, you get invited to go eat, man, and they give you meat, just pray and eat. Don't even ask. Because you got to eat. That doesn't mean he's eating pork, guys. You see, I have this book that talks about Jews in Roman imperial legislation. Very good book. And we found out that the Jews had status based on Caesar Augustus. He made a decree that the Jews could have a kosher slaughtering place. They could have a meat market for them in the kingdom, in the Agora marketplace. They were abstained from serving in the army because you can't stop for the Sabbath to fight a war, or you cannot provide kosher meat for them. So therefore, they found favor. They could just stay home. So they have status. But with the status comes also manipulation. Sometimes the government will use some of those rights and remove them. So what many people don't realize, when Paul is saying, just pray and eat, he's not saying, go eat some pork. Because that was never been acceptable by a Jewish person, no matter what. If there's something else to eat, they'll eat anything else. But in Corinth, they had Corinth, in Aphrodite, the worship of Aphrodite. And they used to do, they have cafeterias, and they found cafeterias and places to eat their meat sacrificed to idols, and a Roman citizen doing special events, and their feasts can go and partake of that. That was part of being a Roman citizen. So Paul is clearly saying, you're not going to eat though. You can't go to a temple and do that. But if I go to your house and you serve meat, not pork, I'm talking about beef or chicken or whatever, and I do not know. Let me give you a personal experience. In August, I was in Jerusalem. I go there all the time. And I was in Jerusalem doing research and filming a documentary. And I got invited to go have Shabbat at the lady who does my tours. She's an Israeli from Morocco. Okay, they do the Shabbats, see everything. But anyway, so her mom, oh Lord, she can cook. That lady's amazing. She can cook. So they made a feast for me and my guide, because I didn't have a place to keep Shabbat that evening. And the title is The Jews in Roman Imperial Legislation. Take a quick picture, that way you can find it. There are other books too. This is one of them. And so we're eating, man, and they have this lamb chops. Wow. The best lamb chops I've had in a long time. So my guide in Hebrew, he started asking her, and I understood, where did you get the lamb chops? The lamb chops. They're incredible. She goes, in Hebrew, oh, I only pay 140 shekels per kilo. And I was eating them. And I look at her and I said, Emet? Really? Only 140 shekels per kilo? Where did you get that? Again, I know how expensive the meat is. She goes, well, I got it in the Arab section. It was a meat halal. Now, I got invited to a Shabbat on an Israeli, and she's feeding me lamb chops. She purchased in the Arab section. And there were 2 pieces left. And I was hungry. But I already eaten like 3. And I have no idea. I'm assuming, remember, I'm in an Israeli home in Jerusalem on the Sabbath. And this lady's feeding me some lamb chops that was halal because it's cheaper. And it's true. It's 100 shekels cheaper. That's like $14, $15 cheaper. And she's telling me the Jews are charging astronomical prices. And then she goes, you want some more? And I said, no, I'm good. I'm fine. I did not know. The moment I found out, I didn't eat anymore. I didn't make her feel bad. That's her problem. She should know better. She's an Israeli. But she invited us to go eat at her house again. And I said, no. Because now I know she's going to serve me meat that is not kosher. Now, but I got another problem. Many of the Muslim meat in Israel carry both symbols, kosher and halal. Because if a Muslim guy gets a rabbi to go and do the procedure of kosher, a Muslim would eat kosher meat, but a Jew would not eat a halal meat. So now the quandary is this. That meat is halal, but was it kosher first? You follow what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Because in Islam, if let's say that Shane is the rabbi and I'm the guy from the Muslim, and we're going to go to this slaughterhouse, and the slaughterhouse is independent from the religious, but they have a rabbi who's ordained to do the slaughtering, and they have a Muslim to be there too. But if the rabbi gets there first and he slaughters it, when the Muslim dude gets in, he goes like, "Oh, was the rabbi here already? So it's good." To them, it's acceptable. But to the Jew, it's not, even if the Muslim guy is anywhere near. You follow? So sometimes you don't even know if the lamb from Australia, which is halal, but it's halal because they sell it to Abu Dhabi in Saudi Arabia, is closer. But we don't know if there was a rabbi who's there who actually made it kosher first. What a mess. That problem would end if we had people in the kingdom who knew how to slaughter properly an animal, and we have butcher chops from the Hebrew roots people, Messianics, that we can buy from.
Yes.
That problem will be over. Now we are subjugated by dealing with what is permissible and what is not. So who's really at fault here? We have at least over 200,000 people who follow Torah and believe in Yeshua. You mean to tell me there's not one butcher within the bunch? Next question.
The next question was projectile hunting. Does that render meat treifa? And because it's not, the throat has not been properly cut to kill the animal.
Well, I mean, how did they hunt in the ancient world?
Yeah.
I mean, it says you can hunt permissible animals. That animal may not be permissible in the temple, but you can eat it. The requirement is to let the blood out, drain it. I mean, are you going to run after a deer? I mean, it's, I mean, sometimes we just got, what happens is that if you shoot at it with an arrow and immediately go and cut the throat, I think it's the time of suffering in between. Show with an arrow and then you go and you cut the throat and you bleed it out. Then in my opinion, I'm good. That's just my opinion now. This will not be acceptable according to rabbinical Judaism. But I guarantee you, if there's no food at all anywhere in Israel, and they see one of the ibex they see over there running in En-Gedi, and they're probably, you shoot it with an arrow, they're going to come and bleed it out and eat it. I got a few more minutes, guys. So another question.
Okay, yeah. Let me see here. I guess a couple things. We've talked about community and assembly and Shabbat, and there's a lot of people that think that Shabbat should be spent at home, not assembling. Community is always a matter of question in a region or a locality. I guess I'd just like to hear some of your thoughts on assembling on Shabbat. Some people look at driving as inappropriate. They don't want it. We've touched on it a little bit, but I just want to hear you kind of sum up some of that, if you don't mind.
Well, I mean, right now, because of the lack of community, we cannot keep the commandment of not traveling too far on Shabbat. I mean, we don't live in a walled city either. So what are the city limits? I mean, so again, these things can be up for discussion and arguments because we don't have a Sanhedrin council. We don't have a body of believers. Now, the Sabbath is a holy convocation. Do you keep it? You do Shabbat dinner, Kabbalah Shabbat, reception of Shabbat, and then you go to the congregation to worship. We live in the dispersion. And I think it's unfair that we don't organize ourselves. We don't establish communities. We don't want to live near each other. And then we complain that we can't get on Shabbat. I mean, do you have this problem in Judaism? No, if you want to be part of Judaism, not a problem. You want to convert, go ahead and convert. What do you need to do? You need to move to the community. Because you're going to have the butcher there, the school over there, the community center there, the synagogue over here, and Saturday night, and on Saturday, you can walk over there. You don't have to worry about anything else. Do we have that structure? No, we don't. Do we want people living with each other? We can't even stand each other enough to like each other on one Sabbath. We don't know how to live in community. So until we learn how to live in community, then these issues will always be an issue. So right now, because of the situation and the dispersion, it's a problem. And we are to convocate. It's a holy convocation, guys. Sabbath. And the history tells us that if you didn't go to the temple because it's too far away during biblical times, you will go to the synagogue. Question, did Yeshua go to the synagogue on the Sabbath? That answers your question. That answers your question. The difference is Yeshua lived in a community. We don't have that type of community. And every time somebody tries to do a community like that, it always goes up in flames. I wonder why. There's no structure of law. If everyone would abide by the same structure of law, there's order. Listen, when I take my tour to Israel, the first night of the tour, I have a meeting for 1 hour. And I tell them, welcome to Israel. This is my tour. These are the rules. You don't abide by the rules, you can go. You can do your own thing. You pay to be on my tour, but my responsibility is to have order. And then I go by everything that we do. Now, this is not a dictatorship. What it is order. Guys, we're going to shop more in Jerusalem than the north because the prices are cheaper. But there are times when you go somewhere in the north that I will give you time to shop because some things you need to have. So I set the rule, understanding that I'm going to be flexible, some room for you to enjoy the trip, but we're not spending 2 hours shopping when we're here to learn about the Bible. You get it? But then when we get to Jerusalem, I give you a whole 4 hours because we go hard the first 2 days. And then I said, take the rest of the afternoon, enjoy yourselves. And then now we all work together, but there has to be structure. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So you have a structure, we're all on the same page. For example, we went to Shiloh and we were there when that little bomb exploded by the bus station. That morning we will go to Samaria. We have an armored bus and it took us 2 hours to get to Shiloh. It only takes a half hour. So I told everybody, guys, we got to go to Itamar. We don't have time. The sun goes down at 4:30, 5 o'clock. Ladies, I beg of you, please help me out. We got to meet at a lunch at 1. We are here at 11. We have less than an hour and a half to cover this to get over there. Would you please help me not shopping here? I promise you, I'll let you shop all you want in Jerusalem. And you know what was awesome? The people were so nice. We learned about Shiloh. They went through the shop and some of the ladies were looking and they kept going and they helped me. And I told them, I said, thank you. The rest of the day, we enjoyed ourselves. They didn't miss the shopping. But when we got to Jerusalem, I kept my word. We have to have structure. And I think, brother, that's the problem we have. We don't have structure. So therefore, when you come to a community, there has to be a structure of order and people need to see the leadership of walking in agreement. so that we can have unity in decision making for community. So maybe you can work it out. The people that are, let's look for solutions. Shane, let's say that you have two families that they don't want to travel on Shabbat. And that's their observance. They have a case, but we also have a case that is a holy convocation, right? Well, how many of you have opened your houses to host them on Friday night for one night? If you live near the community, how many of you say, okay, guys, we have three families that they really don't want to travel on Shabbat. Can we rotate and and tell them, if you come over with us for Shabbat, also bring some food. Keep them accountable. We're going to facilitate for you. You facilitate for us. You can sleep on the air mattress, and we can facilitate one night, and you rotate through the families who can do that. So that way, they don't have to travel on Shabbat. They can all go to the community. Problem solved. The problem is, if you open the doors to people who are not grateful, they'll take advantage. Then the person doesn't want to do it anymore. So you need to train them. Reciprocity and honor. If somebody opens your house to facilitate so that you can keep the commandment, be grateful. Bring something to the table. Treat them with honor and dignity. Don't take advantage of them. That's what the leaders should do. That's my suggestion to you.
Excellent.
Or, hey, will you be willing to camp on Friday nights with us? We'll invite you for Shabbat, some of the homes nearby, and then, you camp by there, or maybe build 1 or 2 rooms in your congregation. All the congregation will donate. You build 3 or 4 rooms, and the people who live far away, you facilitate. Get here early afternoon Friday, and then you don't have to travel on Saturday. That's another option. But do we look for answers? No. I had one guy call me. He goes, man, Rico, I left the congregation because, the Torah says only the sons of Aaron should do the Aaronic blessing. And I left because I told the leader he was wrong. And I said, brother, just because you're right doesn't mean you're right. The way you did it, you created chaos. And I said to him, did you ever think about maybe suggesting to the leader what the Torah says in context? Yes. And then give them a solution. There are people who sing the Aaronic blessing already who are sons of Aaron. Did you think about getting that recording and giving it to the leader so they can play it on Saturday? And you could have stayed in your congregation. Now you left, and you were right, but the way you presented it, you look like a jerk. So now, the fact that you were right, the way you did it created more chaos. So no one's going to look at the commandment the same way because of the way we behaved. You see? So it's not just knowing Torah, it's how to live it and how to apply it. That's why you read some of these books, to learn how did they apply it in the Middle Ages. The question you asked me, well, what if we don't have food? If we live in the country, well, I don't have access to a kosher, I got to eat. Well, just cut the throat, bleed it out, cover the blood, don't manipulate it, and you're good. It's not that difficult. But we need to learn from the examples previously. And to me, that's what the Talmud really is. Stories trying to explain how they understood certain commandments that the Sanhedrin Council and the Mishnah ruled on. That's it. I'm not going to live according to a rabbi in the 1500s. In Poland, I'm from Puerto Rico, from crying out loud. I eat my rice and beans. Or wait a minute, Ashkenazi do not eat this and this during Passover. And the Sephardics, they eat beans and rice during Passover. But the Ashkenazi, they do not. And I'm going like, why is that? Storage. In certain places, due to cold weather or whatever, they store everything in the same place. So leaven will fall into rice and beans. So therefore, they didn't eat it as a custom because of storage in their cultures. So now you're going to tell me in Puerto Rico, I cannot have this because all the way in Poland, you don't do it? Give me a break. We have to have common sense. It's just like the Chabad. They go to Puerto Rico, and the Puerto Ricans are converting to Shabbat, walking 100% humidity in San Juan wearing black and white with a whole suit and everything. I'm going like, you really in love with the tradition, because nowhere does it tell me I have to wear a black suit to go to the synagogue. We got to learn the difference, bro. My brother, we have to learn the differences. That's what's creating all the chaos. Now, let me ask you all a question today. Has your perception changed after I explain things? I'm probably lining up more with the Torah than people assumed. But because I use as a default, my process is this. If I'm talking about Moses, I don't go to Judaism first. I go to the ancient Near East to understand the culture of the time of Moses. What is he dealing with? How did the Canaanites live? How did the Mesopotamians? So let me ask you guys a question. And this is going to be challenging for every single one of you. If you had a perception before, now I'm going to challenge you in a good way, okay? So take it in a positive way. How many of you read the book of Exodus? All of you, right?
Yeah.
Have you studied Egyptology? The book of the dead? Egyptian culture? Hieroglyphs? How many years were they in Egypt? How about the assimilation? No. You read the book of Joshua, right? And God says, don't worship me like the nations worship. Have you studied Canaanite culture? Their language, their religion, where they lived in Israel? They went in there, but we don't know anything about the Canaanites. How about they went into captivity into Assyria? Have we studied Assyrian kingdom, their laws and their treaties? How about Babylonian? Oh, everything comes from Babylon. But wait a second, they spent 70 years there. 70 years. Do you study Babylonian law? How about the court of Hammurabi before they went there, long before? The Middle Assyrian laws. How about the Babylonian culture and the structure of government? How about the topography, the fauna, and the flora? Have you studied that? But yet we read Daniel, we read Ezekiel, we read Zechariah, we read all those books of people who live there. We have no idea where they live, in the geography, the topography, their culture, their language, their agriculture, and anything like that. How about Persian kingdom? When Nehemiah was there, the whole book of Esther is about the Persian queen. Do we know anything about Farsi? How about Zusa? About the culture of the Persians and the influence into the Second Temple period of Ezra, Nehemiah, Joshua the priest? How about the Hasmonean family? How we study Greco-Roman culture, honor and shame, reciprocity, their religion, their language, Greek rhetoric. How about the Romans? What are the 12 tablets of the Roman kingdom? What's the difference between the republic and the empire? Do you know about what the gospel represented to the Romans? Because the word evangelion is not a new word. Do you know the grace was a secular word? Have you ever heard of the circle of grace in Greco-Roman mindset? What is Hellenization, and how did that influence Israel? You see, we read the Bible, but we don't study any of that stuff. Now, welcome to my world. So when I study all that stuff that we never looked into it before, instead of wondering, well, Rico's doing this, why don't we consider what questions is he asking that provokes him to look at the resource so that we're able to understand what is written. Have you studied when the wild olive, oh yeah, that's one example. Have you studied horticulture in the 1st century? The agriculture is very important. If you will know when the mustard seed, the wild mustard, comes up in the land, then when you read the parable of the mustard seed, you know exactly what Yeshua was talking about. How about the wild olive branches? The wild olive branches, Paul told us, because it goes against nature. You will normally graft a natural branch of the olive tree into a wild olive tree. Never a wild olive into the olive tree. Because the wild olive was only good for two things. For one thing, burning. The fruit of the wild olive was inedible. Paul is teaching you a principle. Do we look into first century horticulture? Well, then we say we are grafted into, but then we reject the tree that we're drafted into. And even Paul says, do not boast against the natural branches because they support you. You don't support them. But now I'm in Judaism because I actually believe what Paul says. Now, if you haven't really had the opportunity to look into any of those areas because it either interests you or you don't have the time or you don't know where to start, I'm willing to do it. I'm willing to search it out. I'm willing to share it with you. All I'm asking is for you to validate it. I'm not asking you to believe me. Just validate what I say. I've been saying that for 23 years. But it's easy to criticize and question someone instead of finding out what they know and how they got to there. And that's not fair. And with due respect to all of you, the only reason why I did this to you, I came on because I respect Shane and I respect you. But to be honest with you, it's also disappointing that with over 400 videos on my website, you still don't know me. You still don't know what I'm about. There's still people saying I don't believe in Yeshua. There's still people saying I'm too Jewish. Well, newsflash, Jesus is Jewish. Paul was Jewish. The disciples were Jewish. I'm not a biological Jew, but we're supposed to be grafted in, not into the religion, but into the olive tree, which belongs to Israel. The more I walk in this, the more I should look like the people of the kingdom. Are we looking like the people of the kingdom? Have we embraced the things that Israel has embraced? Because only 30% do it in Israel. Not many do. Am I going to convert to Judaism? No. I've been asked already by leading rabbis, hey, why don't you convert? No. Why? Because you want me to leave my best friend behind. I'm not leaving Yeshua to convert to another religion. You gotta leave your mind. I can still do the prayers. I can still eat kosher. I can still follow the commandments. I can still do what I need to do. And it's interesting that last week I'm talking to one of the leading rabbis in his office. He knows I believe in Yeshua. He knows what I believe, and he's talking to me one-on-one with respect. I'm getting more respect from Orthodox over there than I am getting from my own peers here in America. And that is shameful. And I'm not going to apologize because I want to move closer to first century observance. I'm not going to do that. And I'm not going to apologize to the rabbis because you are my friends and I believe in you. Don't let your past hurts and being wounded by other people determine who you listen to in the future. Because whatever wounds you had is not my fault. So what I will do, though, however, make a deal with you. You can ask me questions. I will give you the best answer possible. You don't have to agree with the answer. It's okay. But at least let us respect one another. And we build from that. And the more you walk in this, you realize, maybe if I look into this area, I may understand where he's coming from. Instead of saying, not you, overall, well, Rico is becoming a Jew. Okay. No, I'm trying to learn the commandment. By the way, how many of our leaders have taught us the 613 commandments? I'm talking not just you, the whole kingdom. It's hard pressed to find congregations who even know them. Now, let me ask you a question. Why should we have leaders leading us and they don't even teach us the difference between holy and profane, clean and unclean? No wonder we're in chaos. So I decided, at least on this side myself, to do my best to share what I'm learning, clean and unclean, holy and profane. And I'm learning a lot and I'm changing a lot. And I'm like understanding more and go, oh, wow, I didn't do that 5 years ago. Lord, please forgive me. I had no idea. How can I change it? Educate other people. Okay. Hey, guys, let's learn this together. How can we do it together? So I pray that this today was edifying, challenging, and speak my heart just like you speak yours. And now when anybody says something about me, please become a witness to really, you heard it from me. So become a witness. No, you don't know what we're talking about. You need to talk to Rico. We spent 2 hours. He had no voice. He has 2 more teaching and he's sharing with us what he believes. Go talk to him. You don't know what you're talking about. Tell him straight up or give him my number. Or better yet, pick up the phone and call me on the spot. I did that one time. One guy came in telling me something. I said, hey, do you believe this and this and that? I said, no. Oh, hey, he doesn't believe it. Eventually, you have to stop the nonsense. You know, that I'm guarantee you that'll stop it. You know, sometimes as we're learning and growing, you know, we go through the stages of grief. I would highly recommend you do that, Shane. When somebody comes into your congregation, and all of you need to help them, try to assess where they are in the stages of grief. If you come from another congregation, hey, Brother Ken, how you doing? How did it go for you? How can we help you? How can we minister to you? And then let them get it out. And then instead of saying, oh, that leader is bad. No. Let us minister to you. How can we help you? What do you need? A Christian is going to be in denial for a while. And we're not talking about the river in Egypt, you know. And you got to minister to them. Show them the evidence. Be faithful. Be loyal. Be patient. Let me show you the evidence. It'll click. It'll happen. You don't compromise your values. You let God take care of them. Your job is not to convince anybody. Your job is to present your lifestyle in a manner of worship so that they can see God through us. That's it. And then somebody comes from another congregation that's wounded, and you already know the type of wound, identify with them and say, okay, that already happened. Let's leave it here. We know the whole story. How can we help you become better? Hey, let's learn the commandments together. So you don't let anybody else do the same thing to you as they did before. Because I have this slang that I've used and is becoming in Spanish. Educación elimina la manipulación. Education eliminates manipulation. You can tell me all you want about what you think, but the moment I know the truth, that's just your opinion. And I can take it or leave it. And I don't have to be disrespectful to you. We need to be educated so we can discern what is and what is not. And then you say, wait a minute. Like, for example, there was one guy who called me this week. And I don't necessarily care too much for the guy. But he called me. He said, hey, can I have 20 minutes of your time? I want to share something that I'm sharing. And I'm listening. I gave him the 20 minutes. I didn't agree with anything he said. But on one thing he said that covers the temple. Now, that's the area I study. So I stop and say, okay, let me ask you a question. On that point, is that your interpretation? Because that's not what the text says. No, that's my interpretation. Okay, continue. The moment he says that's my interpretation, I don't have to agree with it. Because I respect his interpretation. Doesn't mean I need to accept it. But if you don't know the context correctly, and you disagree with the guy because it doesn't line up with your theology, now you're going to have a debate about who's right or wrong. What he said did not line up with the evidence. I don't have to accept it. I don't have to argue with him. Hey, is that a fact or is that an application of your own understanding? No, this is my application. He was honest. That's my spiritual application to this. Okay, not a problem. but don't tell me that's a fact. And then we had a really nice conversation. I honor him by giving him the time that he requested, although he knows that I don't like him because he treated me with very much disrespect before. We left in peace, and he says, thank you for giving me the time. You're one of the few who have done it. Did I want to do it? No, I didn't want to listen to the dude. But sometimes we need to, my wife taught me this, and I'll leave you with this. My wife said, Rico, you need to let your ego be your servant. Don't let your ego become your master. Wow. My best teacher is my wife. My wife is the greatest gift God has given me. She is the one who keeps me grounded. She tells me things straight up. And she said, don't let your ego become your master. Let your ego become your servant. We all need an ego. And I was able to let my ego become my servant because I didn't want to listen to the dude. But afterwards, we had a bridge. Now, next time I say, hey, man, will you give me 20 minutes of your time? Because I want to show you something that I know he don't want to hear it. Let's see if it's reciprocal. So now we start a relationship of reciprocity. I give a little, not compromise. I give you respect, you give me respect. And eventually we can exchange enough that we're not disrespecting one another. We are exchanging in an educational manner. That's when we will grow. Amen.
Amen. We appreciate your time.
Oh, anytime. I mean, to be honest with you, I'm struggling with my voice, but listening to you, Shane, and I respect you. And I think it's also important to be accountable and help you as a leader. Because I know you've been studying with me for a while. You told me you want to be a closer student. And I'm honored by that. And what you hear me say, and because we talked about this stuff before, but now I want your congregation to know that you are following or learning from a teacher who's accountable, who's willing to say, guys, let's talk, who can be challenging at times. And I'm not going to compromise on the things that I know that I could show you that are lining up with the Bible, but I'm willing to hear you. I'm willing to listen to the questions. Even if I don't agree, it's okay. I want them to know that you're going in the direction of edifying them. And it is important that they get to know me too. Because if you are trusting me to help you, and people hear about me from the outside, but that's not who you know, because you actually know me a little bit. I think I owe it to you and to your congregation to get to know you guys. So that way, when I say something that you may not like, eventually I will teach you something that you're not going to like, and you're going to want to push back. And that's okay. But I want you to think, well, wait a minute. What was the thought process that Rico went through to come to this conclusion? Or why is he not budging on it? And the better question will be, hey, Rico, will you share the resources that you found, that evidence that I'm not too comfortable with right now? Let's study it together. Now we become a peer review. Now it comes exciting. For example, somebody say, hey, what's the title of the book? I want you to know where I get my stuff from. I want you to know where I study. I want you to know when I talk about Jewish law, what I'm reading. Now, if you want to read it, I recommend the books you can buy for yourself. Then guess what? Then we can study it together. We can grow together. Now I've got two people studying the same thing. It's not just me screaming out of my lungs. Now we're a team. Oh, Rico, I didn't see that before. Where's that page? Page 500. Let's read it together. Oh, yeah. Rico, I think you missed this point here. I had one guy that he was studying with me for a while. I gave him homework. So I would give him a book. He would read the book, and he was so adamant. That was the only approach. He comes with the argument, have you considered this other resource? And then he goes, oh, man, I didn't see that in this book. The book is only a resource. It's not the final authority. You're just trying to put things together. So don't be so dogmatic on things that we don't understand yet. Let's continue to learn.
Amen.
So God bless you guys. Thank you for your time and for your respect. Thank you for the honor that you give me to hear me. That's the only thing I ask. This was only supposed to be for 1 hour. We spent 3, and I have to do 2 more teachings today.
Yeah.
If you guys are available, I don't know if you have service, but I'm doing a teaching today about the commandments. And I'm going to talk about why I don't keep Christmas without really mentioning Christmas. And I'm going to talk about the commandment in do not worship. Then I'm going to read from a tractate of the Mishnah, Avodah Sarah, and it'll give you an idea how to approach the difference between Hanukkah and Christmas without having to attack one another. Hopefully you consider that, okay?
Is that at 2:30
2:30, yes.
your time? Yes.
Excellent. Well, we appreciate your time very much. We look forward to February when you're up here for 3 days with us. So,
Man.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you guys for coming
yeah.
and asking the questions. It's kind of cool
Yeah.
because you know, it's a lot of work, and I'll deal with my voice later. But I thought I really felt I really felt in my heart that this was important for you, Shane, and I want to honor you as somebody who's trusted me as a student, and I value that. And I want us to continue to work together. And anytime I can, if I'm able, we can do this again. I'd rather you guys have the freedom to ask Shane, and we can ask and come on this platform. That way you can hear things directly from me, and then we can start building trust. Because I understand you've been hurt, okay? I get it. And I don't want to be part of the problem. I want to help you. I don't care about the past. That's irrelevant to me. I want to make sure that your experience in the future will be edifying, that we're moving forward, and at least you find somebody who's trying to help you grow. That's my only intent. Not even asking you to join my website. I just want you to at least hear me out, share the information, and let us grow together, okay? Shabbat shalom, guys.
Shabbat shalom.
Shalom.
Shabbat shalom.